As I look at you all, here we are on a very serious and sober night, a night where we see the justice system, the rule of law working. It works slowly, but it works. Joyce, what's your reaction?
Well, I think this is actually the point that we've been trying to make all along, Steph. We don't know DOJ is going to indict in any particular case until it happens. It's a long path. It's a frustrating path. What Americans can take away tonight is that the process worked, that a career Justice Department official acting as the special counsel has now led a team that compiled evidence sufficient to convince a grand jury to indict the former president. And that is a process that is not grounded in politics, no matter what Donald Trump tries to convince people of. This is a purely professional process grounded in the rule of law. That's something I think we can all take heart from. We've been through a tough few years. The rule of law still works in this country.
Charles, we have been speaking about this for months. Someone we have not heard from all of this time, including tonight, is Jack Smith. He has worked quietly, meticulously, and here we are. Anyone who says we know what's in there, they don't. Ari Melber said it. The whole world is listening to Jack Smith, and he hasn't said anything.
Right, absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because if there's any takeaway, and Joyce started to hit on this, it's that the American public really begin to understand what prosecutors actually do. We have been looking at this case far too deeply as compared to another type of case or another type of investigation where we would not have the details that we've had but for the extensive investigative reporting and the leaks that we have seen. Usually prosecutors work the way that Jack Smith has worked, in silence, without sort of the news cameras and all of the different reporters understanding and trying to monitor every single turn. Jack Smith has stayed the course. He has stayed meticulous. He has stayed methodical, and he has used a very clear line to get here. On Monday, you asked me right here in this chair, why do you think they are moving to Florida? And I said, well, I believe the case is expanding, but I wasn't sure. Today, what we are learning is that Jack Smith understood, by being a prosecutor and playing by the book, the majority of the crimes that he is alleging occurred took place in Florida, which is why he did not want to forum shop. He could have brought this case in D.C., but by doing it in Florida, he made an expert move that's basically going to take away any argument that Trump's team will have to say this is motivated by political motives. This is something that you're trying to shop for a venue that's going to be friendly to the government.
Court shopping.
Absolutely.
Looking for a court that'll look friendly on you. Why Trump says he can't get a fair trial in liberal New York.
If you can't get a fair trial in a state that you won twice in 2 consecutive presidential elections, you can't make that argument. And so you're talking about now, Jack Smith has decided, look, I'm going to go into a firmly red state, and I'm going to indict you there because that's where you violated the law. My takeaway, my initial impression, Jack Smith has shown America what prosecutors do.
Katie, you have the hardest job here. You cover the Department of Justice, and understanding what's going on inside is not easy. What can you tell us?
That's not easy, but I can say that people have been buzzing all day and even yesterday about the possibility of an indictment. Just a little bit of color. There was a big training that happened in the press room on the 7th floor of the Justice Department. It's been going on for days. And yesterday, all of those prosecutors were told they might have to vacate because Merrick Garland may or may not need that room. And I think that many people were saying, well, what else could be happening that Garland would need this room for, that we would have to leave on a moment's notice? Clearly, the anticipation was that Jack Smith was going to basically appear, or one of his prosecutors would appear before the grand jury, present the indictment, and get the vote. It's a really straightforward process. They've heard the evidence. A prosecutor gives the document to the jury, and they can ask any questions. You know, in this case, what is anticipated, again, inside the building, we don't know, and many of the people I've spoken with do not know. But what's anticipated and expected is that what we will see when we finally see the indictment is a speaking indictment. Basically something that explains to whoever's reading it, including the American public, exactly what is going on, as many details as possible to explain why this unprecedented case is being brought. And so because the indictment would be fulsome, that's at least what's anticipated, they were also anticipating that the grand jury would not have too many questions, that they would be able to go through the document with some sort of speed and be able to take the vote and return the indictment as soon as today.
Peter, I was thinking about you earlier, thinking Peter and his wife must be getting ready for part 2 of their book. You have covered this man intimately for years, Donald Trump. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm struck by, of course, is how we have come full circle, right? How did Donald Trump win the presidency in the first place? He won it, at least in part, by accusing his opponent of mishandling classified information, right? That was Hillary Clinton's emails. Time and time again, he said, this is outrageous. We're going to allow that in my administration. We're going to protect classified information. If you mishandle classified information, you are disqualified from the presidency. Those are his words. And here we are now 7 years later. And of course, you know what a difference 7 years makes. And here he is, in effect, now facing the very charges that he wanted to have, you know, lodged against Hillary Clinton, that in fact hurt her politically in the last days of the campaign, because Jim Comey reopened the case and then closed it again just days before the election. So there's a certain, I don't know, irony here, I suppose is one word for it, paradox maybe another, but it's fascinating to see. And he knew all along, of course, having gone through 2016, how important and how sensitive information like this could be and how it could get you in trouble. And what we saw throughout his presidency was time and time again, it didn't matter to him. He shared classified information with the Russians. He posted online a sensitive satellite image of the Iranians. He used a phone even after he was told that the Russians and the Chinese were listening in. He never demonstrated the care for classified information that helped propel him to the White House in the first place. And now somebody has charged him with a crime as a result.
But you can run for the White House, you could win, but it doesn't mean you can run from the rule of law, and that's what we're learning tonight. Again, we have no idea in phase 2 if Donald Trump will be found guilty. We do know he's been officially charged. Anthony, you have been at Main Justice in D.C. with Merrick Garland. Watching everything that's transpired tonight, what are your main takeaways?
I've got a couple observations, Stephanie. First, thank you for having me. I was at DOJ, as you said, when the Attorney General appointed Jack Smith to run these 2 investigations. And so it strikes me as so disingenuous, really, to hear McCarthy and Trump and others talk about election interference here. That is completely the antithesis of what is going on. The reason that Merrick Garland appointed Jack Smith, a political independent, to run this investigation was to ensure, to reassure the American people that these investigations were being conducted independently without regard to partisan political favor of any regard. Now, another thing that I found curious, and I hope is accurate, is this nugget of information that Katie Benner just mentioned about the seventh floor press room at the Justice Department. My hope, Stephanie, is that over the next 24 hours, this Justice Department moves to the court to unseal this indictment. I think we are in a critical period right now. These are some pretty serious charges, and I think the public deserves to know as soon as possible, before Tuesday, what prompted, even in excruciating detail, these charges. We all know that they're warranted, but I believe the public deserves to know more as soon as possible.
Then, Anthony, do you think it was a mistake today that the DOJ did not put out a statement, that Merrick Garland didn't do some sort of press conference, whether or not he was going to answer questions? Because without saying anything, you're ceding the floor and the microphone to Donald Trump.
That's certainly the argument. So I think there are 2 things that happen for DOJ to make a statement. The first is the court is going to have to unseal the documents. The Attorney General has said on multiple occasions, DOJ speaks through its records. Now, what I heard Joyce Vance and others say earlier, and they are absolutely right, is that within the 4 corners of an indictment, prosecutors can speak. And I think that's what should happen. Stephanie, one additional point, if I may observe, last August, there was about a 2.5, 3-day period during the search of Mar-a-Lago when the news became public on a Monday, and the Attorney General addressed the nation that Thursday. I think that could reasonably be interpreted as too much time. And I ran the Justice Department, Department of Communications during that period. My hope here is that the DOJ will condense that time frame and speak quickly when the court allows to the American people.
You are definitely the expert on this subject tonight. Frank, you have been following this closely. What's your reaction?
Couple of things. One is we're here. The system does work, and yes, it takes a long time, but we got here. I think what's interesting is what we don't know so far, because yes, we know that there are apparently 7 charges, and yes, we know it sounds like there's a subsection under the Espionage Act, and it's willful retention. But I'm fascinated by the obstruction and conspiracy charges. So there's somebody else in this picture, maybe multiple somebody else's when we're talking about conspiracy by definition. We need to know who that is, and I'm wondering when that's coming and how we'll find out about that. The other thing is just the logistics of this, security around this. I spent 4 years of my career as an executive manager at FBI Miami. I'm familiar with the territory. It's a challenge from a security perspective on a good day. And so now you're going to see Secret Service, the United States Marshals, the City of Miami Police Department, the Miami-Dade Police Department, and likely the state troopers in Florida, all coming together, trying to coordinate what could be quite a circus based on just what happens in South Florida on a regular basis. And someone's got to step up and say, we're in charge here. You know, this is bifurcated or trifurcated or more. You've got a small city police department, about 3 blocks, by the way, from the federal courthouse. When I say small, City of Miami PD, about 1,000 sworn officers, much bigger, 3 times larger. Miami-Dade Police Department, they're going to have to layer on this. The marshals are responsible for the courthouse security and the people in it, the judges, the prosecutors, etc. Secret Service has a protectee here who's also now a defendant. They're going to have to secure their protectee. FBI going to have to deal with threat assessment, who's coming, who's going, what's the threat picture. It's quite a challenge they're going to be facing.
Joyce, Frank just walked us through the logistics. And as a reminder, when Trump appeared in court in New York, this city was bracing for massive protests, a circus, chaos. It went pretty smoothly then. Besides the logistics, he is set to appear in court on Tuesday. Walk us through what happens once he does, Joyce.
Right. So the first issue will be, what deal does the Secret Service negotiate with the Marshal Service for bringing him in? And their typical expectation, you know, this is obviously unprecedented, but in a situation like this, they will raise security concerns and use that to ask for an expedited process. The former president will not come anywhere close to being in contact with other inmates as he goes through this process. And then he will be presented before a federal judge. He will very likely be arraigned on the charges at that time. That can be delayed a little bit, but I think they'll do it all at once here for the obvious reasons of consolidating this process to avoid upsetting other functioning in the courthouse as much as possible. He will enter the standard plea at that point in time. He will enter a plea of not guilty. And then this case will proceed from that point on. There will be a question as to whether or not the former president will be detained pending trial. I don't expect he'll be detained. In the federal system, that is a calculus based on whether or not he's a flight risk or a danger to the community. And he's not a danger to the community in the sense that federal judges understand that prong of the test to work. So I think we'll see him released on his own recognizance, or perhaps with an appropriate bond. He may be asked to wear an ankle monitor, engage in some other form of monitoring pending trial. But Donald Trump, like anyone else who's been indicted in our criminal justice system, will be a defendant. He will not be able to make his own decisions about how this proceeds. It will be up to a federal magistrate judge. He will have to talk with probation officers who will begin the process of doing a workup on him. It will be a position that Trump is not used to being in, one where he is not in control in any way at all.
Given that, Charles, what kind of defense can he mount, right? Because the witch hunt, hoax, that's not a legal defense.
That's the court of public opinion. As far as the court of law, as we've talked about in terms of this case, you have 2 main elements. You have the actual act itself, and you have the intent behind the act. And that's what you need in order to secure a conviction. His attorneys are not going to be able to attack the act itself. You know the documents were there. They were recovered from Mar-a-Lago. You got notice from the National Archives as well as several law enforcement organizations that the documents were being sought. So the actual act is not the question. Their only approach is going to be, which is why we've heard so much in the news about this, his intent. which is why the significance of the recording that Jack Smith, that came out, that Jack Smith has about him talking about the fact that he had this document and he wanted to show it because of Peter Baker's wife. He wanted to try to embarrass her after the story that she wrote. That becomes so important. The dress rehearsal that we hear about becomes so important. Those notes from his attorneys that were breached because of the crime fraud exception become so important, because that's where the intent lies, and his attorneys are going to try as best as they can to show he didn't have the requisite intent, which is why they originally tried to argue that Merrick Garland and the DOJ approached this as an administrative matter as opposed to a criminal matter. I don't think it's going to be successful. But Stephanie, one of the things that fascinates me about this case in particular
is that it's a former president of the United States.
That part, and the fact that of everything that he's dealing with, this was the one that you really have no one else to blame for, and you brought this all on yourself. Stormy Daniels, hush money, I want to be president so bad. I'm not saying it's okay, I'm not saying it's legal, but I understand it. January 6th, which he hasn't been charged for, I want to hold on to the presidency. I want to stay in power. Again, clearly illegal, but understandable in terms of your motivation. You are in Mar-a-Lago 4 months after you are no longer president, and you get a letter from the National Archives Association. At that point, everything that you have, it's not illegal. You have not crossed the line.
And other people, as we've seen, have taken things out of the White House.
You could have
I did not realize
easily
this.
gotten out of it. At that point, you've been given notice, and you cross the line, and now you embroil yourself into this string of illegality. You brought this entirely on yourself for no other reason than you just didn't want to follow directions.
And the question to that, sir, is why?